How's the royal family? I pray that everyone is doing well. Well, my royal family, y'all all remember this fire. This is a very, very old church, Notre Dame Cathedral. And I was astounded when I had researched this church, how old it is. It's over 800 years old. And when they had this big fire, um, our Father Yahweh told me that um, this church will not be rebuilt, literally. But I didn't, like sometimes um, the Creator is talking to you, and sometimes you'll just keep things to yourself because I often talk about being affected by the system, and you don't want people to think you loony sometimes. But I just, and I know y'all don't push that on me, and I don't push that on anyone. But that's the kind of stuff that irritates me. So sometimes I'll be reserved, and I don't want to sound like I'm a fanatic. Like, oh well, Yahweh said this, and Yahweh said. I've been around people like that. I have an aunt, bless her heart. Every other word that come out of her mouth is God this and God that. So it was just something that just ran across my mind. I know that y'all feel me, but literally, I just kind of kept it to myself. And when it all went down, me and Lisa was talking about it, and she just blurted it out. She said that place ain't gonna get rebuilt. And I said, "Wow, Lisa," I said, "Our Father told me that, and I didn't even want to say nothing about it." So we're gonna go on this journey and see what's really going on. So it says here, no Christmas Mass at Notre Dame for the first time in 200 years. Notre Dame Cathedral will not hold Christmas service for the first time in more than 200 years following the fire that devastated the Paris landmark in April. It will be the first time since 1803 that the 850-year-old cathedral has not held Christmas services. All right, so let's see this video. Let me blow it up for y'all.
For the first time in more than 200 years, the Notre Dame Cathedral will not be holding Christmas Mass. CNN's Melissa Bell has more of the efforts to rebuild this iconic landmark. First caught on social media, the flames quickly took hold. As tourists and Parisians alike looked on aghast and helpless, Notre Dame burned. The more than 850-year-old beams that held up its nave, known as the Forest, went up in smoke. And to the gasps of the onlooking crowd, the cathedral's 19th century spire collapsed. For 9 hours, the fire raged. But by morning, the crowds who gathered to inspect the damage found that much of the edifice still stood. The French president announcing an ambitious timetable for reconstruction.
We will rebuild our Notre Dame Cathedral, even more beautiful, and I want it completed within 5 years. We can do it.
8 months on, that rebuilding work hasn't even begun. It's taken this long just to secure the building, with 3 weeks lost over the summer when fears of lead poisoning led to the closing of the site.
The reconstruction will begin in a year's time, more or less, because the building is still fragile, because of the scaffolding that's weighing on the walls, and so all this means a lot of dexterity, a lot of professional work. But once again, we have fantastic teams.
Last week, a giant crane was cemented nearly 7 feet deep to allow a new scaffolding to be built. Only then will the old one be removed, a delicate operation since for now it is what's holding the structure up. From inside the nave, the scale of what's to be done is all the clearer. A nave which will remain silent on Christmas Eve for the first time in 216 years. And for now, there's little hope that Christmas Mass will be celebrated here anytime soon.
It's exceptional. I mean, this hasn't happened for 850 years, such a blaze. The tricky part is how to know how to go as fast as possible without going too fast, indeed, because you really have to make sure that everything will stand and will stand for at least another 850 years.
As for what it will look like, the jury is out. Architects are vying for a chance to redesign the cathedral's spire, and whether or not the future Notre Dame will be very different to the old, it is achieving the 5-year deadline that looks, from here at least, nothing short of a miracle. Melissa Bell, CNN, Paris.
Okay, my royal family. Let me shut that down. So, we'll take this all the way down. All right, my royal family. So what stood out to me when they were talking about this was the number 200. They said they ain't had services, and this would be the first time in 200 years. So I went to the Word because I wanted to find out the symbolic meaning of 200. And it is very simple but powerful. The symbolic meaning of 200 in the Bible is that of insufficiency. I was like, amazing. So, tons of money have been donated to this church. Tons. And they're using the finest of everything. And their goal is to get it rebuilt in 5 years. And they're having major issues. So, as we continue on, let's watch this video. Okay, let me blow this up for y'all. We can get deeper into this.
News out of Paris. This is the Cathedral of Notre Dame. It is on fire. This is burning out of control.
The state of the Cathedral of Our Lady of Notre Dame in Paris is perilous, and this won't be news to the French engineers and architects and decision makers there. I'm James McCrary. I design churches and cathedrals. It's probably helpful for people to understand that while the fire is out and the damage seems to be known, there's always a lot more damage than one can tell right away. Probably the biggest challenge that the building faces is that there's a very high degree of instability with the building because so much of its structural integrity has been removed by the fire. The roof has been burned, and that really had a whole lot to do with the structural integrity of the top portion of the cathedral. The fire began in perhaps the worst possible place, to begin right in the middle, right where all 4 roofs of the church cross and form a cross. The fire began right at that very intersection and spread horizontally in 4 directions, and also, of course, spread vertically up into that beautiful flesh, the spire that surmounted that beautiful intersection. So the fire, if you think about it, really spread in 5 directions: north, south, east, and west, and also vertically. The cathedral roof structure stood for centuries. In fact, it's wood timber frame arranged in trusses, a triangulation of wood that allows the roof to remain very stable for very long periods of time. And then over the top of that were lighter pieces of wood that allowed then for the lead roof to be put down over the top of it. We think of a metal roof here in the United States, we think of copper, we think of tin. But traditionally, the metal roofs of the great cathedrals in Europe were made of lead. They're very heavy, but they last forever and ever and ever. But lead melts at a very low temperature, and it melted in a hurry, and once the lead had melted through, it allowed the fire to be fed by oxygen from the outside, and at that point, the conflagration was guaranteed for the entire roof structure. Sad thing to see, and also the reason why it went so rapidly. I'm amazed by how much of the original fabric of the cathedral church below the roof remains. The main of the stone vaults that span the interior and form the ceiling of the cathedral nave and the transepts and the sanctuary have remained intact. There is some damage and there is some loss to those vaults. Those vaults were not the roof, they were simply the interior ceiling. but they were made of stone. And because they're made of stone and tied into the side walls of the cathedral, they're helping to brace those side walls now. They're really the only things that are bracing the side walls now and keeping them apart from each other. The roof trusses previously did a whole lot of that work, and now it's solely on the shoulders, if you will, of those vaults. They have to protect those vaults. They have to remain in place until those walls are stabilized. The reportage, of course, is very, very quick and happening and lightning fast, and I think a lot of people want to have a lot of things to say. The reports early on were that all the stained glass windows were destroyed. Thanks be to God, that's not the case. So many of the magnificent windows remain. There has been some loss in the upper portions of the roof. That's to be expected, given the fire. The great spire that surmounted the roof of the cathedral at its intersecting, at its crossing, is really magnificently beautiful construction of the mid-19th century, and a masterwork of a great talented architect and restorationist named Viollet-le-Duc. Very, very terrible to see, but it is not 10th century, 11th and 12th century fabric, but it's a tremendous loss nonetheless. And perhaps the most absurd thing is that I've heard reported is that the crown of thorns was somehow installed way up outside underneath the roof in that spire, in that flesh. This is really the relic of relics of the Christian tradition, and no one in their right mind would have ever taken Jesus Christ's crown of thorns and placed them out of doors, up in the way up in the spire in the attic. Let's be optimistic about the state of craftsmanship and know-how, if you will, in the world today. The best teachers are the buildings themselves. The best recordation, the best example of how to build like they built at Notre Dame is Notre Dame.
On fire. This is burning out of control.
Okay, my royal family. What I wanted to say about this, y'all know that I have a construction background, and when you get into structures that are extremely old, and there is a great deal of damage, I would imagine in that 800 plus year they have had to do some restoration. And sometimes you'll go into things blind. They may not have the blueprints from the original. I don't know. Maybe I should have took the time to even look, but you know where I'm coming from, because I have worked on I worked in buildings that were 100 plus years old, and you know what they do is try to have the building itself stand up, and they'll gut it out, and you have to be very careful what you step yourself into, because it could literally be your death. But the other thing, my royal family, that came to me, and I always often talk about the precision of the divine hand, and you know, these different things that we are seeing that's going on, that I often say that we will see in biblical proportions. It is amazing, some of the things that we are seeing. And the Catholic Church, they enslaved us. And one thing, and we all know this, I hope, that when our Father said that the next time it would be fire, he ain't even really got started. And you seeing throughout the world these fires that they're having, and I'm in California, and it burns every year in California, and it's just like our Father is letting us know these prophecies are going to be fulfilled. And I know this because the Creator has revealed things to me like he has revealed to you, and our Father keeps his word. And it shows you how insufficient the enemy truly is, because they have tons of money and the finest, again, equipment to get this thing built up, and they are at a stump. Even though they have scaffolding around it, you know, one thing that I know, like when I worked on the Bay Bridge, the new one in the Bay Area, when you see a lot of engineers coming out, there is a problem. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and they have to depend on skilled construction workers to basically explore and adapt literally to how anything is built. And you know, it's like, you know, they have like Ben Carson, you know, he's a brain surgeon. Well, what was so unique about him, he did exploratory brain surgery that you don't know what you're going to get into, you know, and you got to be way out there when you going in the brain. So that's how I would look at this, that you got to get some really skilled construction workers that can adapt and maneuver and just take it real slow. But I don't see this being built up, because it's still at ground level and they're trying to push for 5 years. So let's get into this last video so we can get a more close-up view on the damage.
Once inside Notre Dame, you sense a quiet stillness. The floor of the nave has been cleared except for some piles of gravel. It rains inside the church. You have to look up to understand just how much work has to be done. There are gaping holes in the vaults of the ceiling, twisted piles of burned metal and wood. And at the summit, partially burned scaffolding towers overhead, still in danger of collapsing. The 300-ton structure must be reinforced before it can be taken down slowly, piece by piece, a process expected to take until June. In front of the cathedral, tents shelter much of the precious debris, tens of thousands of pieces of stone and some metal that archaeologists are in the process of restoring. Stones that could be used in the reconstruction. But today, the chief architect has a different priority. He's concerned about the vaults in the ceiling.
If we remove the burned woods and the pieces of the framing that burnt, as well as the metal elements that have accumulated since April the 15th, we don't know what will happen. So today we absolutely cannot say that Notre Dame has been saved.
At the back of the cathedral, huge wood structures are holding up the famous flying buttresses. Members of the crew, suspended by ropes, examine the exterior of the structure and constantly readjust the wood supports. Of the 1 billion euros raised to rebuild Notre Dame, 50 million euros has already been spent. As the scale of the project becomes apparent, President Macron's goal to finish the work in 5 years is looking increasingly unlikely.
Well, did y'all see that right there at the very end? Let me scoot that back a little, taste for the royal family, and get a shot of something here. Let me go a little bit more. You see that? You see that on those structures, my royal family? It looked like the devil. That's devilment right there. And they got that all over that church when you look at it real close. Lisa Cabrera was telling me about that. In the construction industry, we call them trolls, or they'll sell gargoyles or whatever they'll call them, but that's what we'll call them, because they have one on the Bay Bridge. I know exactly where it is too, when it was first built, and they got a welder welded in and everything. So this is more of the beginning stages of judgment. And what's so astounding to me is how the enemy can guarantee things, and they're like guarantee that it'll stay up another 800 plus years. These people are comical. They really are comical. And we will see all this type of stuff intensify, because I keep repeating myself, talking about the things that we see will be in biblical proportions. And it is going to really test the enemy, because they heavily rely on their fancy equipment, and it's going to keep them quite exhausted. Because I had told y'all that when I was really picking up on energy about these fires that they are having, and Esau is exhausted, and it's just going to get to the point where they're going to be totally overwhelmed, that they have the state of the art equipment and it just ain't working out, because there's something else deeper that is going on in the universe. And I know the enemy is listening. You must atone for the atrocious things that you continue to project on the royal family. And even though we are out of our captivity, we are still, it's still like a birthing process, and we will still see, I would say, we will see. I tell you how I'll use it. Like I always say, we have been won the war. You have to really look spiritually in this. But we will continue to see the enemy win battles. We should not react or give up our energy like they have won the overall war. We're all being tested, like what is really going on, and it's deep. And how the enemy like to deal with things, they like to make it very complicated. It is very simple. It is time to atone. That is it, and that is all. So, my royal family, render your voice with your beautiful divine words. And it's always, my royal family, I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And with that said, Ashe.